Welcome to Shatter.
Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories. It was 7:13 p.m. on a Tuesday. She was standing by the kitchen sink, not even looking at me, just rinsing out a glass like we were roommates. Strangers in the same square footage. Then she said it, without warning, without a drop of emotion. I just can't stand being near you anymore. No fight, no build-up, no tearful breakdown. Just those 10 words. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. She just said it like she was choosing between two brands of cereal. And then she walked out of the room. I stood there, frozen, keys still in my hand, having just walked in from work. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was surgical, sharp, intentional. She knew exactly what she was doing. And me? I didn't ask why. Didn't beg. Didn't follow her into the bedroom like some lost dog needing validation. I simply put my keys on the counter and left. Didn't slam the door. Didn't pack a bag. Didn't even grab a coat. Because what do you take with you when the person you love tells you your presence is unbearable? You take nothing. You take your absence. I got in the car, drove around the block twice, and parked at the old diner off Mayfield. Ordered a black coffee I didn't drink. Just sat there, staring out the window as the waitress tried not to look concerned. I wasn't angry. I was done. That was the moment I realized she didn't break me. She released me. Because those 10 words? They gave me permission to let go of everything I'd been gripping onto. The apologies I kept rehearsing in my head. The plans I kept making alone. The hope that somehow we were just going through a phase. No, this wasn't a phase. This was her exit. She just didn't expect mine to come without a performance. I didn't text her that night. I didn't check to see if she noticed I hadn't come back. And the next morning? Still nothing from her. But I didn't go home. Instead, I drove to work early, stopped for gas, and somewhere between the parking lot and my desk, I made a decision. If I was too much for her to be near, then she'd never have to be near me again. No threats. No goodbye letter. Just quiet separation. The kind that doesn't ask for closure, because it is closure. But what she did after that, I never saw coming. And it changed everything. The first night I didn't come home, I expected something. A message, a missed call, even a half-hearted "where are you?" But there was nothing. So I doubled down. Turned off read receipts. Put her notifications on silent. And stayed out of the space she said I was contaminating. If my presence was too much, I'd give her exactly what she asked for, my complete absence. I crashed at a buddy's place the next few nights. Slept on a worn-out couch, surrounded by silence. But for the first time, it wasn't hostile. It wasn't a punishment. It was peace. By the third day, something strange happened. She texted. Not a full message. Just a single line. You coming home? No question mark. No warmth. Just static. I didn't answer. And suddenly, the silence she once weaponized began to echo back at her. I started noticing small things, not through her words, but through the way her routine cracked. She sent a Venmo request for half the Wi-Fi bill, like I was a roommate she hadn't seen in days. She posted an old photo of us, not recent, not tagged, but public, like bait. But I wasn't biting. I knew her patterns. The moment she felt distance, she'd reach, not out of care, but control. She wanted to see if I was still orbiting her, still available, still near enough to pull back when convenient. But I had changed direction. I started using the gym at night. Different time, different location. Switched my route to work. Stopped going to the cafe near our place. She didn't know where I was. And that terrified her more than anything I could have said. Because she expected anger. Expected drama. Expected the usual begging and explanations. Instead, I gave her silence. Still. Composed. Undeniable. That's when her messages shifted. From passive to desperate. Can we talk? I didn't mean it like that. You just caught me in a bad moment. But I remembered her face too clearly. That moment in the kitchen. The way she meant every word. And now that I was gone, she wasn't sorry. She was alone. I checked our shared accounts. She hadn't canceled anything. Hadn't moved a thing out of the apartment. Because deep down, she still thought I'd return. Still thought this was a pause, not a break. But I wasn't paused. I was done. And the scariest part for her wasn't that I left. It was that I did it without a sound. By the end of the first week, she started acting like the breakup hadn't happened. Not officially, not directly, but in the small, calculated ways she always used to reset the dynamic without taking accountability. She texted again. "I'll be home after 7. If you're around, we could talk." Not "I'm sorry." Not "I shouldn't have said that." Just a vague offer, like I was a guest in a space I used to pay for. I didn't reply. That night, she posted a story with a guy from work. Nothing romantic, just casual, filtered smiles, a clink of glasses, the kind of post that says, "Look how fine I am without you." It didn't land. Because the difference this time? I wasn't watching. She thought I'd see it, spiral, reach out, ask questions, demand clarity. But I didn't even open it. And she noticed. That's when the cracks started to show. She called my best friend, under the excuse of just checking in. Told him she hoped I was doing okay. That she hadn't meant what she said. That she thought maybe we both needed space, but not like this. He didn't respond the way she wanted. He told her what I'd already told him. I wasn't angry. I wasn't plotting. I wasn't trying to make her jealous. I was gone. She didn't handle that well. 2 days later, she left a bag of my things on his porch, stuff I hadn't asked for. Old hoodies, chargers, a book she once bought me but never read herself. No note. Just a symbol. She wanted to end it on her terms. But this time, she wasn't in control. Because the truth is, she didn't expect me to leave. Not really. She expected the same cycle. I'd get hurt, pull back, she'd drop breadcrumbs, I'd come running. But I didn't. I stayed away. Not out of spite, but clarity. I saw what she really meant in that kitchen. She didn't want me near her. And now that she was finally alone, she was starting to understand that silence cuts both ways. And mine wasn't temporary. It was permanent. Because I wasn't playing the game anymore. I was rewriting the rules. And the first one was simple. If someone shows you they can live without you, let them. By the second week, she stopped trying to look indifferent. I could see it. Not through her words, but through the timing of her actions. The text came later at night now. Shorter, sharper, less curated. "You made your point. So this is how it ends. You really don't care at all?" No more emojis. No more fake calm. Just frustration, raw and clumsy, from someone who was finally losing control of the script. But I didn't respond. Because this wasn't about being cold. It was about staying clean. And the more distance I kept, the more obvious it became. She wasn't sorry she hurt me. She was sorry she lost the upper hand. She started reaching out to mutual friends, subtle moves, casual check-ins, the kind where she could play both roles at once, the victim and the concerned ex. One of them told me she asked if I was seeing anyone, not because she cared, but because she needed to know if I had found somewhere else to land. The thing is, I hadn't. I wasn't dating. I wasn't partying. I was rebuilding, piece by piece. I'd started spending more time at the gym, not for revenge, not for attention, but for structure. I took on a new project at work that demanded focus. I met my brother for coffee twice a week, something I hadn't done in years. Every day, without her, brought one thing into sharper focus. How much of myself I had put on pause trying to keep her comfortable. And now, I wasn't comfortable. I was awake. She tried one last move. She emailed me, not from her usual account, but a secondary one I'd forgotten she even had. The subject line was blank. Inside, just one line. "We didn't even try to fix this." That's when it hit me. She never wanted to fix anything. She wanted the illusion of control. And now that I had stepped out of the frame, she was staring at a blank picture, unsure how to fill the silence she once enforced. But the truth is, some things don't need fixing. They need to be left exactly as they are, cracked, distant, exposed. Because silence isn't just absence. It's a mirror. And she was finally seeing her own reflection. The one she used to silence me. Now echoing back without mercy. By week 3, I had become someone else, not out of spite, but necessity. I wasn't checking my phone every few hours. I wasn't replaying the moment she said she couldn't stand being near me. I wasn't searching for answers in her silence. Because I wasn't living in her world anymore. I was building mine. And that quiet, it stopped feeling like punishment. It became power. The kind of power that doesn't yell, doesn't demand to be heard. It simply moves forward without explanation. She called me that Friday. First time since I left. I let it ring out. A minute later, another call. Then a voicemail. "I know you're there. Can we please just talk? I think we should talk." No apology. No ownership. Just the word "we." Thrown out like a rope she hoped I'd grab onto. But I didn't. Because when someone tells you they can't stand your presence, they don't get to panic when you give them what they asked for. I wasn't being cruel. I was being precise. The same way she used to ration affection. Just enough to keep me close, but never enough to feel safe. I now rationed my silence. Not to hurt, to heal. Because if I broke the stillness too early, I'd risk stepping right back into the loop she designed. Conflict, withdrawal, half-closure, emotional reset. No more loops. That weekend, I changed all my passwords. Transferred utilities out of my name. Updated my mailing address to my brother's place. No warning. No fight. Just closure, done quietly. She noticed. Her next message came through at 1:37 a.m. "You're really not coming back, are you?" And for the first time, I felt nothing. Not guilt. Not regret. Not revenge. Just peace. Because the man she once dismissed was gone. And in his place was someone she never expected. A man who didn't argue, didn't explain, didn't beg for understanding. He simply acted. Strategically. Calmly. Finally. That's the part no one warns you about. How silence, once painful, eventually sharpens into clarity. Into boundaries. Into strength. She wanted chaos. Emotion. A storm. But I gave her a mirror. And now, she's the one looking into the void. Hoping it will speak. Hoping the man who always came back forgot to close the door this time. But I didn't. Because I didn't just walk out. I sealed the exit. I knew she'd eventually break the pattern. Not because she wanted to fix things, but because silence terrifies people who are used to being in control. It happened on a Wednesday night. I was finishing a run, back at my temporary place, when I saw her name flash across my screen. Not a call this time, but a long text. It started like this. I didn't mean what I said. I was angry. I didn't know how to express it. I know you probably won't answer, but I had to say something. It went on for several paragraphs. Regret. Confusion. A few carefully placed lines about how she missed the way I used to look at her. But here's the thing. I didn't need to read it all. Because nothing she could say now would erase what she already proved. She didn't need me gone to find herself. She just needed to feel the consequences of pushing away someone who had quietly built his whole life around making her feel seen. That's the irony. She wanted distance, and when I gave it to her, she mistook it for cruelty. But it wasn't cruelty. It was closure, the kind she couldn't interrupt. The next day, she tried again. Another message. Shorter this time. Just a link to a playlist we used to listen to during late drives. The caption read, "Remember this?" I did remember. And I also remembered every time I sat in that car next to her while she stared out the window, scrolling through her phone, offering no conversation, no warmth, just presence. Like that was supposed to be enough. But presence without connection is just noise. And now that I was gone, the silence wasn't comfortable anymore. It was real. She wasn't battling my anger. She was battling my indifference. And there's nothing louder than the sound of someone who has finally gone still. I deleted the playlist. Not out of spite, but because some songs don't hit the same once you stop pretending they mean something. That weekend, she sent one last message. "I know I pushed you away. I don't expect anything. I just hope you're okay." I didn't reply, because the man she once silenced had already spoken. Not through words, but through the one thing she never expected to be final. Silence that stayed. By the fourth week, something changed in her tone. Not in her words, in her timing. She wasn't just reaching out at night anymore. She was posting in the middle of the day. Carefully framed photos of food, sunlight on her hair, her at a brunch table with empty chairs in the background. It wasn't life. It was theater. A performance meant for one person, me. And I wasn't watching. That was the power she never understood. When you stop reacting, they lose the script. She used to treat silence like a weapon. Withdraw affection. Pull back just enough to make me reach. She needed to be chased, to be missed. But now that she was the one left standing in the silence, she didn't know what to do with it. So she tried to curate guilt. A mutual friend sent me a message, said she was struggling, that she'd been quieter than usual, that maybe I should talk to her before it got worse. I didn't respond. Not because I didn't care, but because I finally did. I cared enough about myself to stop giving oxygen to a fire she never intended to put out. You see, guilt only works when it lands on someone still hoping for reconciliation. But I wasn't hoping anymore. I was healing. And part of healing is recognizing the performance for what it is, a desperate attempt to rewrite the ending without rewriting the behavior. The following weekend, she sent a photo. Not a memory, not a message, just a picture of the guest room we used to fight in, clean, organized, my old things placed neatly on the bed. A quiet offer to return. But I'd already returned. To myself. And that space, that room, wasn't a home anymore. It was a museum of everything I tolerated while convincing myself it would get better. She didn't know how to ask me back, so she decorated the absence. Hung photos where the silence used to live. But it was too late. The man who once fought for proximity was now anchored in distance. And what she didn't understand, what she never had to understand, was that the loudest kind of goodbye doesn't come with yelling. It comes when the door closes and stays closed. Not out of pride, out of peace. And peace is never loud. It just never comes back. By the time the 5th week rolled around, even her silence changed. It wasn't cold anymore. It was hollow. She had stopped texting, stopped posting, stopped pretending everything was fine. Because when the audience stops watching, the performance falls apart. And I wasn't watching. I wasn't waiting. I had moved past the part where closure was a conversation. I was now in the part where peace was a decision. She finally understood what I meant when I used to say, I just want calm. Because now, in her new quiet, there was no applause, no validation, just stillness that stretched through every room she once filled with control. I didn't need her to explain. I saw it in the details. A mutual friend told me she left the party early, said she seemed distracted, said she asked if I'd been seeing someone. But I wasn't. I wasn't interested in replacing her. I was interested in removing the version of me that allowed her behavior to survive for so long. That's what people like her never expect. That the man who stayed through the worst would finally stop knocking. That the man who gave chance after chance would one day disappear without a sound. And now, she had to live with that disappearance. Not a vanishing act. Not revenge. A clean break. Strategic. Intentional. Absolute. She thought I'd come back once the dust settled. She didn't realize I was the dust. And once I settled, there was nothing left of us to sweep up. Her last message sat in my phone for days, unopened. Not because I was afraid to read it. Because I already knew what it said. I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. Let's talk. But I wasn't looking for dialogue. I was living in action. I had started therapy. Picked up new routines. Even reconnected with my sister, someone I had distanced myself from during the relationship because my ex didn't get along with her. And that was the final shift. Realizing that what I'd been calling love was actually permission. Permission she granted and revoked based on her mood. Now, I granted myself permission to rebuild, to step back, to leave her exactly where she left me that night in the kitchen, alone. And this time, the silence wasn't her weapon. It was her consequence. Because the thing about silence is, it only hurts when it echoes. 6 weeks. That's how long it took before she made the final move. The one she always swore she would never make. She showed up at my brother's house. She didn't call ahead, didn't text, just rang the doorbell like nothing had happened, as if time could be undone with the right combination of pity and nostalgia. I wasn't there. He told her I'd stepped out, offered no timeline, no updates, just a nod that said, "You missed your moment." She left a note, folded, no envelope, written in her sharp, slanted handwriting that once filled birthday cards and sticky notes on the fridge. I didn't open it for 2 days, not out of spite, but because I already knew what it would say. And when I did open it, I was right. I messed up. I didn't mean what I said that night. I didn't think you'd actually walk away. You were always the strong one. I just didn't realize how strong until you stopped fighting. It wasn't an apology. It was a confession, a subtle admission that everything she once thought was power, her distance, her control, her silence, had been hollow. And now that I had taken it from her by refusing to play along, she was rewriting the narrative. Suddenly, she was the one who didn't know what she was feeling. She needed time. She panicked. But that's not how it happened. I was there. I heard her words. I saw her face, calm, unwavering, almost bored when she said she couldn't stand being near me. And that truth matters. Because men like me, we remember not just the pain, but the clarity. And that moment was clear. So I didn't respond to the note. I folded it back up, placed it in a drawer I no longer opened, and moved on with my day. Because that's the part she still doesn't get. This isn't about bitterness. It's about boundaries. The kind you build brick by brick after realizing your silence was never weakness, it was warning. And now, she's living in the echo of a goodbye she never believed would be real. Not because I hated her, but because I loved myself enough to stay gone. And when a man finds peace after chaos, he doesn't go back for closure. He closes the door, quietly. So the only voice left in the room is the one that told him to leave. 7 weeks. That's how long it took for the silence to no longer be shared. It was no longer something I gave her. It was something she had to live in, alone. Because I wasn't just gone from her life. I had dismantled the version of myself that tolerated her presence. And when a man rebuilds from the ground up, he doesn't invite the wreckage back in. She sent one final message. This time through someone else, a friend of hers I barely knew. He approached me outside a grocery store, awkward and hesitant, holding his phone. Said she just wanted me to know she was in therapy now. That she finally understood what she did. That she wasn't expecting anything. Just wanted to be honest. I nodded, politely, and said nothing. Because honesty that arrives only after consequences isn't truth. It's strategy. It's the mind grasping for control after the heart has already forfeited its place. I wasn't bitter. I was done. I'd moved. Changed my number. Switched jobs. Not to run, but to reset. Every trace of our life together had been erased. Not by anger, but by design. I didn't stalk her socials. Didn't ask friends about her. Didn't indulge in the fantasy of revenge. Because the real revenge was this. She finally had to face herself, without me there to absorb the damage. Without me cushioning her coldness. Without me spinning her silences into patience. Without me shaping her rejection into resilience. And now? Now she was alone in the quiet she once controlled. The final scene wasn't dramatic. There were no suitcases thrown downstairs. No rain-soaked arguments. No final kiss at a train station. Just a man who never came back. And a woman who never believed he'd leave until the door had been closed for weeks. Until the texts stacked up unanswered. Until the photos meant nothing. Until the silence didn't just echo, it settled. That's how stories like this end. Not with screaming. Not with a second chance. But with absence. Cold. Absolute. Unapologetic. She told me she couldn't stand being near me. So I vanished. And what she did next? She waited. And waited. Until the truth finally hit her. I wasn't punishing her. I wasn't proving anything. I just meant what she said. And now, in her world full of noise, my silence is the loudest thing left. Real men don't explode. They exit. Subscribe for more power stories.